Volodymyr Zelenskiy address the foreign policy think tank based in London, Chatham House, where he talked in a very interesting exchange of views about the fact that Russia thinks it can effectively escape war crimes prosecutions because of its nuclear capability. Now, watching that press conference with me is Douglas Herbert, international affairs commentator. Before we go into the meat of what the Ukrainian leader was saying about Russia and so on, I'm fascinated by the fact that this actual meeting was broadcast, because as you and I know, Chatham House normally is behind closed doors, it's off the record for exactly this sort of reason, so that people can exchange frank views about world problems. So this is an extremely unusual move, isn't it?
Exactly. They did not apply the famous Chatham House rules, right, where the information can be shared, but the speaker cannot be named. They obviously made an exception here for the president of Ukraine. And Annette, what I found interesting is, yes, he has proven to be, in address after address to, I've lost count of all the parliaments he's spoken to. I think he's going to be speaking to G7 leaders soon as well. He has proven himself a master of crafting his message very specifically, fine-tuning it to his audience, mentioning 9/11 and Pearl Harbor when he was addressing the U.S. Congress, and the Battle of Britain when he was speaking to the Brits. And he did it once again today, in a sense. You knew that he knew who he was speaking to. One of the world's most preeminent think tanks. Chatham House exists to get brainy people together all in one sort of room and to come up with solutions to some of the world's most pressing problems. And what's interesting here is we both saw it. For a second, it was Zelensky the student. You saw him pick up his, I think it was a pencil, and start taking notes, because you really get the sense here, it wasn't just him sharing his experiences and as you saw, answering that first question about was he surprised by the valor and the bravery, the courage shown by his compatriots in this war so far. But he had a lot of questions himself, and you alluded to one of them. This came at a crucial time in this war right now, a real transition moment, a make or break moment in many cases, where there's a sense it could go either way. Russia is right now gearing up its war machine for a much more expected brutal assault in the east and south of the country. Doesn't mean it's given up on the rest of Ukraine, but right now it's focused heavily on the east and south of the country. And we've heard in recent days the foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, say no amount of sanctions, nothing you can inflict, meaning the West, can inflict on Russia, is going to put a dent in our determination to bring this war to a successful victory and conclusion. So we hear these real fighting words coming out of Russia's highest levels. And you have Zelensky coming to the table, and as he always does, a mixture of gratitude to the countries that are helping a lot. He's always very grateful, but at the same time, he always has that little dig. Some are not doing enough. And these are the questions you need to ask right now. And the questions he had for Chatham House, and I don't think he was just asking these flippantly. I think he really wants answers. He needs them to think about this. What type of sanctions can you bring to bear right now on Russia? Nothing else seems to work. They've done coal. They're phasing in the new oil sanctions. Gas isn't up there yet, but gas could be next. What does it take to inflict real pain on Russia and make them perhaps change their calculus and rethink their strategy? Does anything do it? And the nuclear weapon. You could tell he's haunted by this continual allusion in recent days and weeks, more and more, especially in the Russian propaganda media, the state media, to the use of nuclear weapons. He said specifically that they're now talking on Russia's state-run propaganda networks how many minutes it takes nuclear-capable missiles to reach European capitals. This is the talk on the television that millions of Russians watch every night. He is genuinely right now looking for answers. How do you deter Russia? Given its current leadership and configuration and their mindset, how do you genuinely deter them from even thinking about using those nuclear weapons? He wants answers, and he's ready to listen.
And the other thing he was raising is that, as I said earlier, Russia thinks it can get away with it because of its nuclear capability. So how do you prosecute war crimes in an efficient manner? Because when you look at what's happened in the past, that certainly is not the case, is it?
Absolutely. And he mentioned the KLM flight that was shot down.
The Malaysia Airlines.
The Malaysia Airlines flight, 8 years ago right now. And whatever came of it, he asked. Whatever happened, was there any real punishment for for the people behind that shooting down, which has been investigations, international investigations have borne out that it was the pro-Russian separatists who shot that plane down. But he says, yes, you're absolutely right, Annette, that the very fact that Russia has this nuclear ability has given it, in a sense, a cloak of invulnerability. It cannot be held to account, because you try to hold it to account and it will raise the it will push that nuclear blackmail button. Doesn't mean it will necessarily use nuclear weapons, but just the mere mention of it gets everyone running scared across the West, across European capitals, as people are discussing it everywhere right now. And I think Zelensky right now feels that it's at that turning point right now. Things could get very dangerous. I think he does have a lot of faith in his forces, his troops, and their ability to hold their own right now as the heavier weapons come in from the West. But I also think the West, he's asking the West, do not underestimate Vladimir Putin at this moment in time. It's a very psychologically dangerous moment. It's a very militarily dangerous moment.
Douglas Herbert, thank you so much.